You know, in a world where things seem to be changing so fast, geopolitically speaking, there's something truly huge, but maybe flying a bit under the radar, that seems to be gaining real momentum. We're talking about this rumored, and now, based on some leaked intelligence, apparently confirmed, emergence of a unified One Africa government.
Hmm.
So today, our mission really is to cut through all the noise. We're diving deep into leaked info from a pretty high-level African Union insider. They call him Chairman Shadow, as reported by Supreme Affairs Breaking News. But we want to understand what's really at stake here and, maybe most importantly, what this could actually mean for you.
Yeah, from an analytical perspective, the sheer scale, the ambition of this whole project is just, well, it's astounding. You think about the history, the diversity of all these nations across the continent, moving towards this kind of deep integration. It's not just another policy shift. It's like a fundamental rewrite of how sovereignty works on a scale people don't often even think about, let alone try to pull off.
Okay, so let's get into the core of it then, because this leaked info, the main thing is this confirmed launch date. Reports, apparently from these very discreet, high-level virtual meetings, AU commissioners, strategic partners, they're saying the official start date for this One Africa government is February 2026. So this isn't just some vague goal anymore. It sounds like a real specific target date.
In February 2026, if you look at the bigger picture, it doesn't seem like they just picked it out of a hat. You know, it looked like a very strategic, kind of synchronized Big Bang moment. The date reportedly lines up with when the next AU chairperson is installed. So it marks the end point of years of groundwork, foundational planning. It really suggests this carefully orchestrated thing launching this whole new continental setup at just the right moment.
Right, and this Chairman Shadow figure in what SABN calls a classified debrief apparently spelled out exactly why this date.
Yeah.
He supposedly described it as everything aligning like gears on a final lock, so not random at all. The reports say it lines up with the end of João Lourenço's from Angola, his term as AU chair. Plus, it's apparently when the final testing for AFRULD, that's the proposed gold-backed currency, and the African digital ID system, are meant to be wrapped up. And get this, they're also talking about appointing regional governors who would effectively replace existing heads of state.
Wow.
And integrating national defense commands into the main AU Peace Security Council. And maybe key for everyone listening, big public campaigns, voter education, economic orientation programs, they're all supposed to finish up just before in December 2025.
It really makes you think, doesn't it? I mean, how many different things had to perfectly fall into place for a timeline like this to even seem possible? The way it all connects politics, finance, this new digital ID thing, security. It points to something incredibly comprehensive, almost unparalleled, really, in its planning. And that detail about AFRULD being gold-backed, that's critical. They're trying to anchor its value to something real, not just, the whims of foreign exchange markets. It's a bold play to build an economic bloc that can stand on its own, resistant to outside financial pressures.
So, okay, February 2026 is the date. What actually changes then? What becomes official when this unified government supposedly launches? According to these leaks, well, quite a lot actually. We're talking a continental parliament where AU lawmakers get, quote, real executive power.
Real power, okay.
Then there's One Africa citizenship. So basically, if you have this digital ID, you'd have legal access, work live, vote, trade anywhere across the continent. No more borders in that sense. AFRULD, that gold-backed currency we mentioned, is slated to actually start operating for state reserves, public payments, trade between African countries, and security-wise, instead of relying on, say, the UN and African Peace Force, would launch its own continental military stabilization teams.
Taking security in-house, basically.
Exactly. And digitally, this AfricaNet firewall run by the AU's cybersecurity division would oversee a, quote, semi-sovereign African internet and data network. They even compare it to China's model.
That's a big one, data sovereignty.
Yeah. And finally, a new judicial body. A continental court to handle things like cross-border crime, corruption, military coups. Chairman Shadow reportedly summed it up. It will no longer be 55 states talking, it will be one government acting.
What you're describing it's a fundamental shift in sovereignty itself. It's not just tweaking the economy or politics. It's a deliberate move to bring governance, security, even digital control inside the continent. That AfricaNet firewall idea, for instance, that's more than just cybersecurity. It suggests a future where Africa controls its own data flows, its online commerce, separate in some ways from the global internet we know now.
Now, behind any massive change like this, there are always key people, right? The ones pulling the levers. So who are the figures driving this, according to these sources, the sort of engine room operators? Well, there's Chairperson João Lourenço of Angola. described as the quiet power broker, pushing for unity but without a lot of drama, apparently coordinating support behind the scenes. Mahmoud al-Yusuf is named as the engine room operator, the guy overseeing the build-out of the digital IDs, the apps, the financial platforms, the tech backbone, essentially.
Right, the nuts and bolts.
Then there's Chairman Shadow himself, SABN source, called a digital ghost, supposedly plugged into every committee, every classified draft, and someone called Mama Pan Africa. Her job, reportedly, is the cultural side, making sure unity feels real, relatable, from Malawi to Sierra Leone, writing the onboarding documents, the legal stuff, even the psychological prep.
That's fascinating, addressing the human element.
Yeah. Then General Umoja, an ex-peacekeeping commander, now an AU strategist planning the Continental Army's command structure, apparently to keep any rogue states in line. And finally, the economist of Addis, described as a soft-spoken numbers genius managing the metrics for Afril's reserve basket. He's quoted saying, "Don't compare us to Europe, we are Africa."
Look at those roles. It's clear just how much diverse expertise is needed for something like this. You've got political strategists, tech people, cultural experts, military planners, finance gurus, all needing to work together. It really underscores how multifaceted this whole project is. It doesn't sound like just one person's idea, but a really deeply networked, comprehensive plan.
And the impact of all this, assuming it happens, well, according to these leaks, it's already sending ripples, maybe even shockwaves, through the sort of old world order. The leaked info suggests some pretty strong reactions globally. AFRICOM, that's the U.S. Africa Command, reportedly flagged it as a continental autonomy threat. They're worried about losing foreign influence, it seems.
Understandable from their perspective.
Then France, described as panicking. They're worried about potentially losing their military bases in Francophone Africa and, crucially, the dependence on the CFA franc.
Ah, the CFA franc. Yeah, that's a huge historical and economic tie.
Exactly. Two currencies used by 14 African nations, tied to the euro, guaranteed by France. Afrould aims to break that dependence. So reports say France is aggressively trying to influence the Afro Charter to try and keep some financial leverage.
Trying to shape the rules.
Meanwhile, China is reportedly openly supportive. They apparently see it as proof that building anti-Western blocs is working. They're offering things like satellite access, funding for digital infrastructure, fintech security partnerships.
Playing the long game.
And the EU, Brussels, they're apparently torn. They want the trade, the access to resources, but they don't like losing leverage. So they're pushing what the source calls soft diplomacy, culture programs, education deals, migration pacts, trying to maintain influence that way. The takeaway from these sources seems to be Africa is playing chess here, not checkers.
It raises a really important question, doesn't it? What does all this tell us about global power dynamics right now? You can clearly see this struggle for influence. Traditional powers reacting, sometimes anxiously, to the potential rise of a new unified bloc. The different reactions reported concern, panic, support. They really highlight the geopolitical stakes and the shifting alliances in this increasingly multipolar world. And of course, it's important we stress these are the perspectives presented in the source material we're looking at, not our own takes.
Absolutely. But it's not just external reactions. Chairman Shadow also reportedly points to resistance within Africa itself. He says basically not everyone is celebrating behind closed doors. The pushback is real. For instance, some West African elites apparently fear losing their tribal influence networks, traditional power structures.
Okay. Entrenched interests.
East African private companies are said to be worried about losing their competitive advantage if trade tariffs disappear continent-wide. Some Southern African politicians apparently fear being, quote, reduced to regional governors with less media shine and prestige.
The personal dimension, yeah.
And civil rights groups are pushing hard for strong guarantees against surveillance or misuse of that new African digital ID. There are even whispers, according to the source, of continental sabotage attempts. Certain leaders may be deliberately slowing down infrastructure projects to hinder the timeline.
Active resistance.
But Chairman Shadow apparently has a response to that. He's quoted, "We know who's dragging feet, and we have protocols. No one man can stop 1.4 billion people."
Well, putting that into context, real unity on this scale, it almost always means bumping up against deeply entrenched interests. It's complex. Resistance from different groups, political, economic, social, that's almost a natural part of any huge systemic change, especially one that shifts power and money around. The massive challenge is trying to blend all these diverse national priorities into one continental vision. Chairman Shadow's confidence suggests they believe they have a strategy to manage that internal friction.
And let's be real, according to these reports, the vision here goes way beyond just Africa, the successful launch of a One Africa government. It's positioned as being about the new world order that might be emerging. For example, they suggest African citizenship could become like, quote, the new black card. Powerful, respected,
It's a
borderless.
status symbol almost.
And Afrold, the currency, is projected by these sources to potentially crack the top 5 wind reserve currencies by 2035.
That would be transformative.
African-led internet governance, they suggest, might even form the basis of a non-Western digital future. But here's where it gets really provocative. February 2026 is reportedly seen by insiders as a kind of test run for one world government protocols. They even refer to it apparently as the beautiful one world order.
Wow, okay. That's a loaded term.
And the idea is this new order doesn't start in Washington or Beijing. It starts, they say, in Addis Ababa, Nairobi, Kinshasa, Accra. If Africa pulls this off, manages sovereignty with unity, uplifts its people, the reports suggest the entire global south might just follow suit.
The implication there is profound. It's this idea of a major paradigm shift starting outside the usual power centers. This vision puts Africa not just as a player, but maybe as a leader in shaping future global governance, offering a different model for unity and self-determination. It really could inspire other regions, couldn't it? And fundamentally challenge the old power hierarchies by showing a path to self-reliance and collective strength.
So, okay, zooming back in, what does the immediate run-up look like? These reports give a pretty specific timeline leading to February 2026, August 2025. Afrold's official exchange rate gets locked in, AU countries have to submit their voter education materials, big radio campaigns kick off under a My Continent Power theme.
Getting the message out.
October 2025, beta testing for the digital ID voting systems. They're planning a simulated Africa-wide vote using the new tech.
A dry run.
November 2025. The final structure for the Continental Parliament is released, and members for it are apparently pre-elected in secret ballots.
Pre-elected. Interesting.
December 2025, a big 7-day live education broadcast called Africa Rising airs continent-wide. Plus, the first units of the Inter-African Peacekeeping Force get pre-deployed, and then February 2026, the launch. Official AU ceremony founding the unified government, public swearing-in of the regional governors and continental ministers. A fruit goes into public circulation, the internet protocols and the digital ID system go live. Boom.
Just thinking about the sheer scale and the detailed choreography of all those steps. Imagine the logistics. Standardizing voter education across 55 countries by December. Rolling out complex digital ID systems pretty much simultaneously. It's just a staggering amount of work, almost unprecedented, really, in its ambition and scope. It speaks volumes about the level of coordination they must believe is possible. And if you're listening to this, maybe especially if you're, say, 25 or younger, these reports suggest you could be inheriting something powerful. What they describe sounds like maybe the most powerful identity ever created. African. 1. Legitimate, digital, borderless, powerful. Here's what the sources suggest could really change for you. You could potentially work anywhere on the continent. No more visa hustles, as they put it.
That alone would be huge for many. You'd reportedly get paid in Afrold, not in what the source calls manipulated USD. You could vote for leaders continent-wide, get legal protection across all 55 states. You'd belong to, arguably, the most resource-rich bloc on the planet. There's this powerful line in the reports. Your ancestors died for flags. You'll live under one.
That's quite a statement.
And SCBN apparently talked to some young Africans, like Tapiwa, a student from Zimbabwe and South Africa, who said, "We're tired of borders. I want one Africa so I can move like I matter." Or Zanel, a software engineer from Ghana working in Kenya, "A fruld will make my fintech dream real. We can finally compete with the West." And someone named Musa just said, "One Africa ID means no more visa shame. Let's move."
It really highlights the aspirational core of this whole vision, doesn't it? For younger generations, this new identity holds the promise of a massive shift in how they see themselves and the opportunities available. It could genuinely open up an era of new mobility, economic power, self-determination, free from those old colonial boundaries. It's really about reclaiming agency, but on a continental level.
Now, of course, some critics will look at all this, the scale of it, the centralization, and say, this is just another one-world government scheme.
It's an easy criticism to make, perhaps.
But Chairman Shadow, according to the reports, had a pretty direct answer for that. He apparently said, "The problem is not the concept of global unity. The problem is who runs it. If Africa runs it, we call it justice."
That's a powerful reframe.
Yeah. The source really emphasizes this isn't some foreign plot. It's being presented as an African innovation. Chairman Shadow apparently points out that the world has been centralized for decades in banking, data, weapons, medicine, but Africa was often left out or left behind. So now the narrative is Africa is building its own version of that centralization, and the rest of the world will just have to adjust.
From an analytical view, well, it's a striking way to frame global governance from an African standpoint. Instead of just reacting against centralization, this initiative suggests Africa is stepping up to lead that kind of movement, but shaping it to serve its own interests, and maybe the interest of the wider global South. It really positions Africa to take a leading role in defining its own future within that global system.
So February 2026. Keep an eye on that date. If these reports, these leaks, turn out to be accurate, it could be the day Africa, as they say, stops being 55 separate flags and potentially becomes one destiny, one passport, one currency, one army, one ID, one education system, one voice, and maybe, just maybe, one example for the rest of the world.
So, considering everything we've unpacked today, the sheer scale and ambition, a final thought perhaps, how might a truly unified Africa, if these plans succeed, actually redefine global power? Could it genuinely inspire other regions? What would the world even look like if this vision, this beautiful one world order, as the insiders reportedly call it, really takes hold? And ultimately, who stands to benefit most from such a profound shift?
Lots to think about. So, what does this all mean for how you view the world moving forward?